Welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to take a look at the second monk iteration that saw play at my table. This came out in 1981. It's dragon number 53, and in here is an article called He's Got a Lot to Kick About. It's an attempt to fix the monk as written in the player's handbook. So this is part 2 of my monk series. There will be another one after this, showing the different monks that did see play at my table, both by me as a player and by other people who I DM'd. So today we're going to take a look at the monk. He's got a lot to kick about. Also, for anybody who has subscribed, I want to say thank you very much. I really appreciate the support. If you've been on the fence about it, come on in. It doesn't cost anything. Just come on in, help keep the channel growing. Also, there's a Patreon. If you could take a look at that, I'm offering active rewards on Patreon. So take a look and see if there's anything you can do to help out there. That's all I've got for the commercial. Back to the important stuff. Dragon number 53 with the upside down back. That's kind of funny that it's printed upside down. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but we're going to take a look at the monk from dragon number 53. He's got a lot to kick about. All right, continuing part 2 of my look at the monk. This is the second version of the monk that made its play in my table, and it's from page 6 of dragon number 53. And the article is, Why Isn't This Monk Smiling? He's got a lot to kick about. I was enthusiastic about the monk. I had a monk, Bloge Mayfair, and I'd been playing him since 1980. And this article came out in September of 81. And it certainly made me rethink the monk class a little bit. But at this point, Bloge Mayfair had gotten up a couple of levels and was doing okay. So I really didn't look too hard at this. But in 81, my wife was interested in running a monk. She was my girlfriend then. So I showed her this article and she read it over and she said, yes, I would like to run that one. So sometime September or October of 81, she rolled up a monk based on this class out of the Dragon magazine. I realized this isn't official, etc. That's never mattered to me. I've allowed NPC classes the whole time I've ever DM'd. I even have one of my players, Mike, who plays an anti-paladin. So I had no real problem with it. I read the thing over, and I thought it was, in a lot of ways, much better than the monk out of the player's handbook. And eventually, after about another year or so sometime in 82, I came over to this class also. Now, this class also has quite a few powers that are based on psionics. I'm going to explain a little bit about what the powers are. And when we first ran this class, we were still allowing psionics. But when in about 82 to early 83, we banned psionics. We just changed some of the powers over. And I'll go over a little bit of how we changed it and how we kept this monk class pretty viable. So basically, the article by Philip Myers starts out with basically how much the monk stinks. They're very, very difficult to play at low level, he says here. And of course, the big problem is they're AC 10, and they can't do a thing about that when they start. Hit points are awful. He recommends in here, if you're going to run a monk, have it at 16 Constitution, because otherwise it's not worth running the monk. Multiple attacks with open hands don't become anything interesting until 6th level. And then at 7th level, you've got to fight to go up in levels, starting at 7th. And if you fail, you lose all the way back down. So there are a lot of penalties for playing a monk. And I went over those in part 1 of this series when I looked at the original player's handbook monk. So in here, he talks about ways he would fix it. So the rest of the article this part of the article is just introduction and what happens if you fail your challenge to go up from 7th to 8th level. And here he says, okay, here's a couple ways we can cure it. First off, he changes the experience points, makes it much more affordable to go up as a monk. 1,501 to 3,001, etc. We get a much quicker progression. We get 6-sided dice instead of 2-sided or 4-sided dice. That helps a bunch. It helps the monk stay viable. It just makes the monk playable. And then all the way up to Grandmaster of Flowers with 2,800,001 experience points, 22 6-siders. So he's going to rack up quite a few hit points, especially with that 16 con I was just talking about. Now we go to Monk's Table 2. And on Table 2, he is improved, he the author being, we have improved effective armor class at level 1 to AC 6, the equivalent you'd get if you were had an 18 dexterity, if you got dexterity bonuses. So I think that's a good move. 15-inch move, always good. Open hand damage 1 to 4, and then the special abilities all the way through you. And I'll get to those in just a minute. I'm going to do those separately. So then, under his table, by level 5, we're armor class 3 with no other magical enhancements, a 17-inch move, 3 to 2 attacks, and 2 to 8 damage. That's really good. Now, he recommends that you don't have to fight to go up in levels as a monk until you go for level 12. And I agreed with that, and that's one of the things we kept. So at level 12, you're fighting to go up. So you're 5 to 2 attacks per round. That's 2 attacks the first round, 3 attacks the second round, and 4 to 16 damage. You are becoming a pretty good damage creature here. And of course, the monk is going to have some magic items. Very few, but some magic items. So now let's take a look at his special abilities. 1, Feign Death as the present-day monk ability D. I agree. Feign Death I have never seen used. Get it out of the way first. B, the Mind Masking ability, resistance to ESP, like the ability B in the player's handbook. Speak with Animals, like ability A. Self-Healing, plus immunity to disease, including immunity to haste and slow spells. So he just lumps it all in there, and you get it much earlier. Body Equilibrium is the psionic ability, except can be used once per day for 1 round per level. You also require Mind over Body, usable for up to 1 day per level of the monk. Body Equilibrium allows you to adjust your weight so you can walk across, the fabled rice paper walk where the monk leaves no trace. In this case, when we banned psionics, we just swapped it out and gave it as a ring of water walking. We realized it limited it, but it was still pretty good. And Mind over Body is a form of healing. We just upped the healing a little bit on the monk power. Empathy is the psionic ability, but usable only once a day. We just swapped the spell Empathy once a day for that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about spell and spell-like abilities in the monk. Star Wars, of course, was already out. We already had 2 Star Wars films. We kind of looked at this as a monk was kind of a latent force user. He was someone who wasn't trained in the use of magic, but someone who could use magic because it was in the air around him. So we just let these magical powers happen, but they were magic. They were subject to any kind of magic resistance if it applied, or saving throws or anything like that. And that was way better, more balanced in my opinion, than what we were allowing is psionics. Invisibility is the psionic power, but usable once a day. We actually invisibility didn't make a bunch of sense to me. I know the whole ninja sneaking in unseen and everything. We just made that as a pass without trace. Molecular manipulation is the psionic power, usable against inanimate objects only. This allows you basically to destroy an inanimate object with your mind. In this case, it would just be the monk finding the weak spot. So we basically didn't change that. We just didn't call it that. Resistance to charms, hypnosis, etc. As present monk ability G, plus 18 intelligence for purposes of telepathic and mind blast attacks. Again, no real need to change that there. J, retarded aging, as though the monk were using a phylactery of long years, plus immunity to poison and immunity to Geisha and Quest. Yeah, I like that being lumped together. The monk, as you're seeing, is much more powerful than it was. Body control, as the psionic ability once a day for maximum of 10 turns. Body control allows the monk to ignore heat and cold and things like that. We kind of didn't really do anything with that once we dumped the psionics. The monk just kind of lost that. By the time he's getting special ability K, he's up around 10th or 11th level. So that's not really a problem. L, the quivering palm, present ability K. We had no problem with that. Dimension door once a day is the magic user spell. Again, that whole latent force user kind of thing. Speak with plants is the druid ability. Mind bar is the psionic ability. 100% success, usable once per week. We actually just allowed that the monk was kind of shielded as wearing a ring of mind shielding. Object reading is the psionic ability once a day. That never made sense to me, so that one didn't make the cut. Dimension walk is the psionic ability. Usable once per day. Didn't really get that high, except my character, Bloge Mayfair. And by then, we'd gone over to a different one, so that never became an issue for this class. Astral projection once a week. I certainly understand the martial arts movie rationale for that, but again, we never got to it. Premonition of death or serious harm to the monk. Again, we didn't get to it. And then T, the monk acquires the ability to generate Tower of Iron Will or Intellect Fortress. Those are psionic abilities that, again, we didn't get to, and then plane shift as the cleric spell. Had we had anybody get that high, we certainly would have done it. By the time my character, Bloge Mayfair, went through the monk progression, we had moved on to the third phase of monk. And I think everybody knows what that third phase is, but I'm going to let that be a surprise for the third video. And then he's got a note here justifying the quasi-psionic monk abilities, just basically through mental discipline that the monk is able to achieve these things. And other suggested changes were open hand damage is halved, rounding up, when the monk is attacking a creature 10 or more feet in height. The monk's thieving abilities are limited to moving silently, finding but not removing traps, hiding in shadows, hearing noise, and climbing walls. We actually left the thief abilities alone. I saw no real reason to take that away. The monk is originally conceived as kind of a subclass of thief anyway, and I like the thief abilities on a monk. So we just left those alone. As far as the damage, there's no mention in here about the half point per damage per level that you get when using a weapon. We did leave that in. Single combat as a means to advancement is not required till the monk reaches 12th level, and then only if the title is occupied. So at 12th you would have to, and then if you lose 100,000 experience points and cannot challenge for 1 year. We actually didn't do it that way. We had you stay 1 point in the level you didn't achieve, and then we let you try again, and I think we made it every 6 months. And this wasn't a huge problem in our campaign. There were some NPC monks out there, but by the time monks get up to 10th, 11th, 12th level, player characters get up to that level, you've gained some peculiar things that are always, to you. You've gained a little ability here for maybe a deck of many things or something. And even though that's not actually just your martial arts skill, some of the stuff is inseparable, and player characters tend to win at this level against NPCs of commensurate level. It's just how the game is written, and that's kind of what we did. And at 10th level, monks' hands and feet become equivalent of +1 weapons for determining what creatures they can hit and do damage to. And at 18th level, they get the equivalent of +2 weapons, and the moral is you can't karate chop an iron golem. Actually, you can karate chop an iron golem, you just can't do it to any effect. Upper level advancement options, he goes into a lot of alignment here. Lawful good, lawful neutral, lawful evil. A lawful good not requiring you to fight, just waiting for the post to be vacated. Lawful neutral having you fight, but maybe you fight more often. And the lawful evil, the fight being to the death, is really the point of it. I don't necessarily disagree with any of that. We never did it as one big clump of monastic monks. Like karate, several of us had karate backgrounds when this came out. And like karate, there are many different schools. So I've been in Ishinryu karate for over 20 years, and there are so many different lines of Ishinryu, and their progression is different, their kata are different, there's a lot of differences. So I can't say which is right and which is wrong. So then we get over to basically his closing comments, his rationale for the rule changes, basically to make the monk playable. Anybody, as he says in here, who is dreaming of playing Bruce Lee or being David Carradine from the old Kung Fu series, wasn't going to have the experience they thought they were going to have. And that is certainly true. I started with the first edition, out of the book, monk, and I had a heck of a time. But I liked him, so I kept going. Incidentally, Bloge Mayfair, I forgot to mention in my last battle, one of his distinctions was he was dropped at the Moat House as we were doing Temple of Elemental Evil in one of his earliest adventures. I always kind of took that as a badge of honor. So he's just giving his rationale for why he made whatever changes he made. He felt that the thieving skills didn't really belong in the class. Why would a monastic being learn to pick locks? My answer to that is why not? I agree some of the stuff doesn't make sense, but it's a fantasy role-playing game. I was not too worried about that stuff. I was worried more about game balance than anything else. I didn't want one character class overpowering the others. And this monk certainly does not overpower the others. It's good, and it's good as written, and we played it for years, right up until mid to late 85. This was our monk. So starting in about late 81 with my wife's character, Bianca, and going through about 4 years. This was our monk. Like I said, the only change we made was when we removed psionics about an hour after this article, about a year after this article came out, we removed psionics from the game. We just altered the powers here to reflect more of our non-psionic campaign. Incidentally, in reading this, in preparation for this, taking a look at this article, I reread the psionic section. It's probably the first time in 20 years I've read the psionic section of the Player's Handbook. Wow, are those overpowered? Wow, are those unbalancing? Wow, I am so glad I banned those. I've seen no reason to ever change my mind on that. It comes up at our table once in a blue moon, but by and large, none of us really want psionics in the game. I feel that belongs more to a game like Traveler anyway. So that's all I've got to say today on page 121. I hope you like this look about what a monk's got a lot to kick about. And soon I'll do part 3 of this. And like I said, there's no surprise where part 3 is coming from. But still, I'm not going to say until part 3. So until then, thank you for watching. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you next time on page 121.